research panelists, we are beyond delighted to virtually stand here in front of you as we discuss our research proposedly entitled The Effectiveness of Using Resin from Camansi tree or Artocarpus camansi as an Alternative White Craft Glue, school year 2020-2021. The proponents of this study are Mr. Aguilar, Mr. Antanoy, Mr. Christie, Mr. Hardinel, Mr. Pedida, Mr. Serminio, Ms. Castro, Ms. Leo Perio, Ms. Paglinawan, Ms. Rosa, and Ms. Kibuyan.
Let's now begin with the introduction or background of our study. For this part, I will give emphasis to the timeliness and relevance of our study to the status quo or amidst the current COVID-19 pandemic. As we move towards the new normal, education shifted from face-to-face classes to online or distance learning. With this, some may argue that the use of glue in this type of setup is already unnecessary. However, reports have suggested otherwise. In an article published by CNN on August 2020, it was revealed that American parents, teachers, and students who are experiencing online learning still think that the basics are still required and essential even in a remote setting. The basics being pertained by the respondents include school supplies like pen, notebook, paper, scissors, and even glue. This proves that the use of glue is still essential even in distance learning. This is even more highlighted for those students who frequently use glue, such as architecture and fine arts students. A significant amount of people are still using glue for academic purposes. That's why we need to ensure their safety. Based on James Rowland's blog reviewed by medical professionals in 2018, some synthetic glue contains toxic substances which can harm our respiratory system and even cause brain damage. This could be dangerous, especially now that we are fighting a virus that attacks our respiratory system. According to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention USA on 2020, those who have existing respiratory complications are more likely or more vulnerable to die of COVID-19 due to the fact that the said virus enters and attacks the pulmonary organs first. During these troubled times, it is very important for us to stay conscious and healthy, especially regarding our respiratory systems. By simply inhaling toxic substances from synthetic glue, a lot of damage can occur in the long run. As a response, we, the researchers, are very eager to continue this research to yield an organic, safer, and more cost-efficient alternative white craft glue.
Let us now move on to the objectives and questions of our research. The main goal of our study is to determine the effectiveness of resin from Camansi tree with the scientific name of Artocarpus camansi as an alternative white craft glue. Specifically, we seek to answer the following questions. Number 1. Is there a significant difference between the commercial glue in the market and the Camansi glue in terms of its health hazard? Number 2. What are the characteristics of the Camansi glue in terms of spoilage period or its expiration date, lead time or the time it takes to create the product? And last, adhesiveness or how effective is the product in terms of pasting materials like papers. Third and last, what are the levels of general acceptability of the product in terms of color or whiteness? Is the color appealing or not? Texture, if the viscosity of the glue is just enough. Odor, if the glue is pleasant to one's sense of smell. And presentation or how the product was presented and packaged.
Next would be the actions from results. The affirmative results of this study will yield the cost-efficient and non-toxic white craft glue. Specific beneficiaries include students lessen, if not stop, their exposure to the hazardous substances from synthetic commercial glues. This focuses on frequent consumers of glues such as architectural and fine art students. Parents lessening their expenses for their children's projects that will require a great amount of glue. This includes dioramas, 3D models, 3D architectural designs, and other art crafts. Businessmen provide an opportunity to make new investments. And lastly, for future researchers, this can be used as a reference or source of information to be used for their own studies. This research is expected to have significant benefits on risk reduction and management, specifically on health-related concerns. It will lessen the risk of having severe respiratory complications and brain damage from toxic materials that the users unconsciously inhale from synthetic glues.
The conceptual framework of a research consists of the visual presentation of the relevant variables of the study and maps out how they might relate to each other. Also, it consists of the input, process, and the expected output from the study. In this study, our conceptual framework consists of three phases: the input, process, and the output. Since this study's main objective is to produce an organic and cost-efficient synthetic glue, the first input will be the resin from the Camansi tree. Also, this study will be testing the general acceptability of the Camansi glue in terms of color, texture, odor, and presentation. The process of this research will involve first extracting resin from Camansi tree, which is making a small and deep wound at the surface of its trunk to allow the sap to flow, then placing it in a tin container. Next is making the process of making the glue itself. This will be done by boiling the resin 10 to 15 minutes, then allowing it to cool afterwards. If the resin is cooled and the desired texture is achieved, we will then proceed to packaging it. However, if the desired consistency of the glue is not yet achieved, we will redo the boiling process and adjust the time accordingly. Lastly, the process of testing the general acceptability of the Camansi glue will be done by having a survey assisted by a questionnaire to the sample of randomly selected grade 12 STEM students of San Lorenzo Ruiz Senior High School residing in Mamgahan, Pasig City. For the expected output of the affirmative result of this research, it will yield an organic, non-toxic, and cost-efficient Camansi glue. There will also be assessment on the general acceptability of the product for public use in terms of color or whiteness, texture or the consistency of the glue, odor and presentation, or the packaging.
So, proceeding to the research design and methodology, allow me to read the first paragraph. So, the researchers of the study used the quanti-quali approach. The approach is more focused on the quantitative type because data in this research will be easily evaluated and presented through numbers and statistics. Moreover, the researchers will still continue to use minimal qualitative context to discuss and explain their research. The researchers' aim is to determine the effectiveness of Camansi tree resin as an alternative main ingredient for white craft glue. Therefore, experimental design of research shall be used. We use the quanti-quali approach because the assessment of the effectiveness of the Camansi glue and its general acceptability will be presented through numbers and statistics, thus easily fitting into a quantitative type of research. Nonetheless, there will also be qualitative context that will be used to further explain and elaborate the entirety of the study. Also, since the main goal of this research is to produce an alternative organic glue from Camansi resin, experiments will be conducted to achieve the desired consistency of the resin as a white craft glue. So, we will be using experimental design in this research. And now for the second paragraph, experimental research is a scientific approach conducted using two sets of variables wherein the first set of variables is manipulated and applied to the other set of variables to measure the effect on the second set. The researchers will conduct experimentations to yield Camansi glue as well as to assess its features. The researchers will then package it similar to how commercial glues are packaged. Afterwards, the researchers will test its acceptability to the public through the use of survey questionnaires. As stated in the conceptual framework earlier, the process of manufacturing the Camansi glue itself is initially boiling the resin for 10 to 15 minutes, then letting it cool. However, if the desired consistency, texture, or viciousness of the material is not similar to that of the synthetic commercial glue yet, we'll be going to manipulate the time of boiling resin in order to achieve the desired result. Aside from the consistency or the texture of the organic glue, we will take in consideration as well if the adhesiveness of the product is is affected by the time spent on boiling the resin. So proceeding to the third paragraph of the research design and methodology, Camansi glue will be distributed to front around the selected grade 12 STEM students at San Lorenzo Senior High School residing in Barangay Mangahan, Pasig City. The respondents will then assess the characteristics of the products which are subjected to their own preferences. Considering the pandemic and in accordance to certain quarantine protocols, the data gathering procedures will be taken online. So the respondents of this study will be grade 12 STEM students of San Lorenzo Senior High School residing in Barangay Mangahan, Pasig City. Simple random sampling method will be used and 20 randomly selected students from the population will be the one to assess the characteristics of the products subjected to their own preferences. Due to certain community restrictions, the researchers will be just given them the product, then the data gathering procedure will be taken online. So for the last paragraph of this part of the research, the researchers adapted a 9-point hedonic scale for the research instrument. The mentioned scale is primarily used to assess the preferences of the public in consumable products. The researchers then aligned the characteristics of the Camansi glue, specifically the color, texture, odor, and presentation, to be assessed by the respondents. So in the distributed questionnaires of the researchers, the 9-point hedonic scale is used to assess the general acceptability of the product. The scale uses numbers to represent its acceptability in terms of odor, texture, color, and presentation. 9 would be interpreted as like extremely, 8 as like very much, 7 as like moderately, 6 as like slightly, 5 as neither like nor dislike, 4 as dislike slightly, 3 as dislike moderately, 2 as dislike very much, and 1 as dislike extremely.
Next is the scope of work. The following are the assigned tasks and position of the researchers for this study. Aguilar Ian Jester and Hardinel Mark Vincent, research members, will be assigned for the technicalities. This involves compiling all paperwork in documents and making PowerPoint presentations needed for the research.
Antony Vincent, research member, will be the one tasked to extract raw resin from Camansi tree, since it is most suitable for him, because he is nearest to the location of Camansi trees.
Christy Kyle Angelo, Paglinawan Elia Jeline, research members, and Rosa Chirish Dayan, research leader, will be assigned to do and edit all paperwork needed for the entirety of the study. This includes chapter 1 to 5 and research preliminaries.
Edida Jetro, Castro Kathleen, and Ramos Siniski, research members, will be tasked to conduct the data gathering procedures. They will be the one to distribute the product to the respondents and gather data online.
Queen Freya Therese, research member, will be the one to manufacture the Camansi resin to produce an organic white craft glue. She will be the one to boil the raw resin and change the lead time if necessary.
Serminia Jack Carl and Bea Leoperio, research member, will be tasked to package the organic glue in the packaging the same as synthetic glue in the market.
Next is the proposed lead times of the study. The number of working days per activity that will be presented in this part are just rough estimate of the time we will spend in making certain parts of the research. For the chapter 1, we are expecting to spend 7 days in finishing it, 7 days for the chapter 2, and 7 days for the chapter 3 as well. Extracting the enough amount Camansi resin from the Camansi trees will take 7 days to complete too. The making of the Camansi glue, including the boiling, cooling, and experimentations, is expected to reach 7 days. Placing the finished organic Camansi resin in a bottle or a container for glue will take 7 days as well. Then the data gathering procedure, which includes distribution of the finished product and online survey of general acceptability, will take place for 7 days. Then, proceeding to chapter 4 and 5 will take 7 days each. Lastly, the research preliminaries will take 2 days to finish. Hence, the total number of days in this proposed lead time is 65 days.